KCRH 89.9 FM, the East Bay's best variety. That's Ed Sheeran and Thinking Out Loud. We found love right where we are. We are here today, finally, talking to Dr. Descendants Ahmed. He's finally been able to break away from all of his duties here on campus. First of all, we want to qualify him and let him know that we know what we're talking about when Dr. Descendants Ahmed. Dr. Descendants Ahmed, please tell us your credentials and what kind of work you've done.
Well, I've been professor for over 30 years. I've also done social work, concentrating in the African American community, and that dates back to the early 1980s. And so I have interacted with people who suffer a variety of problems, from substance abuse, mental impairment, homelessness, incarceration, etc., in an effort to try to help them find balance in their lives.
Exactly. And you have credentials, so you have PhD.
I have a doctorate in law,
okay.
JD.
Right.
I have 2 master's degrees, and I have also, as I've said before to you, I'm proud of being a certified mechanical draftsman. So I did that when I was really, really young. So.
You said, whatever it is, I got something to fall back on. I appreciate Dr. Descendants Ahmed. We've crossed paths back in the day, and it was in Laney College.
That's
I was really
correct.
impressed
That's
with
correct.
your whole delivery and how you orated the words and your studies of African American history and what we were doing, and we put a play on, I believe, at one point. It was beautiful, and I just appreciate you. And I wanted to bring you in specifically to talk about the homeless crisis in the Bay Area. What's going on, man? What's really going on?
It is a serious problem. It is an explosive problem, and if we don't get a grip on it very soon, we in the inner cities especially are going to be overwhelmed with that problem and the many other problems that it brings along with it. For example, since 2010, we've consistently had about 500,000 homeless people throughout the United States. But that number in many urban areas, such as Oakland and California and San Francisco, is increasing. And if we look at Los Angeles, for example, we find that about 60,000 people are homeless right now. And that rate of homelessness is increasing such that I did a trend analysis that I want to share with you.
Okay.
By 2025, that number will increase to about 70,000. And if we don't find a way to reduce the numbers of people who are homeless by 2026, we're going to be hovering around 100,000 people. And just let me add this. When we talk about population size, we measure towns and cities depending upon the numbers of people that live in them. So a population of between 20,000 to 100,000 persons is considered a large town.
Wow.
So we are approaching, in Los Angeles, for example, a population of homeless people that is equal to a large town, but it's a floating town because it's a homeless town. And in Oakland, California, we are approaching the same minimum of 20,000 because right now we are near 15, 16, or 17,000 homeless people in Oakland, and thus we are approaching the size of a small town that's floating because it is rootless in the city of Oakland.
Wow.
And this is a pattern that is nationwide in the larger cities such as Oakland, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and New York, and so forth.
So here we are, 2020. Billions and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in commerce. One of the wealthiest countries, if not the wealthiest country in the United States, in the world. And yet and still, we have this kind of issue.
Let's just do a little arithmetic on that point you just raised.
Yes.
Recently, I calculated, going back to 1964, how many years our nation has been involved in an undeclared war. I came up with 30 years, roughly speaking, because I'm counting Vietnam and I'm counting Iraq and Afghanistan.
Okay.
So we're talking 30 years of undeclared war now. The arithmetic that underscores those years, which, by the way, is 56% of the number of years between 64 and 2020. 56% of that time we've been at war, but we have spent over $18 trillion, and that money has just simply been wasted because there was no resolution with respect to Vietnam. We lost.
Right.
And there is no resolution with regard to the conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan, either for the United States nor for the people living in those nations who are worse off now than they were before.
Before we entered the country.
And having played no part in the tragedy of 9/11. So now what is the national debt? It happens to be about $22 trillion.
Wow.
So we've spent on war almost an equal amount of money that now we owe because our government has had to borrow money in order to pay for the war.
You know, this is really ironic because when you look at third world countries that are suffering from the indignities of war, we have to call that the indignity of war because you have citizens that are walking around there.
We have veterans that are homeless.
Veterans that are homeless. I
just had a young man tell me in class yesterday, he spent 8 years in the Army, and when he got out, he was homeless.
Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. When you see real vets with signs.
And he was stationed in Iraq.
Right. Oh, tell me. So we always have a rationale for what we do. We always have a dismissive kind of culture where we just have to lay it on some other kind of aspect or phenomenon or some kind of other means that people are going by to subject themselves to this kind of uninhabitability process. What do you think about those people who criticize the homeless?
Well, I think that, of course, it's always sometimes easier to sweep the dirt under the rug, our dirt.
Yeah.
But the characteristics that I'm describing to you are those that we would typically think of when we think of a poor nation.
About 2 blocks long, under an underpass.
A couple of football fields.
A couple of football fields. And I went by and I said, does anybody see this?
Well, there's a tragedy here, Michael.
Yes.
Unfortunately, now people are viewing the homeless as a tourist might view some place in another country. They're not understanding their connection to it and the ramifications that are already taking place on the quality of our lives. And I'm talking about health.
Right. Which we're going to get into after the break, because I want you to specifically talk about the crisis as it relates to health, as it relates to mental health, as it relates to how we can be walking down the street and just by the mere fact that is going on, how it affects us.
Yeah, and people are, as I said, they're sightseeing the homeless now.
Right, right.
They're sightseeing the homeless despite the gravity of that problem for everyone.
Right, right. And I've seen, and I was down south, and it was amazing because when I was down south in LA, Orange County, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, you don't see this. You just didn't see.
Well, we may not see it because they may be on the outskirts of those cities.
Right, but you just didn't see.
But you don't see it.
The impact of homelessness there. You saw one person pushing a cart. Okay, we get that, which was the norm. It has happened. People are homeless.
We've always had
a couple.
That level of poverty.
That level,
but
right.
When you approach over 500,000 people and growing and moving toward exponential growth,
right.
Now we're talking about a social disaster.
KCRH 89.9 FM, the East Bay's best variety. This is DJ Micah D and Dr. Stephen Ahmed talking about the homeless crisis in America and specifically in the Bay Area. We'll be back after this break to talk more about the health concerns to everyone. We're going to have a sweep, and then we're going to have Miss Mariah Carey talking about My Love right here, KCRH 89.9 FM, the East Bay's best variety.